embracing consciousness.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I'm reading today from Rays of the One Light. These are commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriyananda and based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Today's reading is entitled The Inner Kingdom. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. Most people imagine that the inner kingdom, as Jesus described it, lacks the fascination they attribute to sense life. The bright lights, the diverse attractions, the joys, and the laughter. Little do they realize what a vast universe exists in their own selves. There are many passages in the Old and New Testaments of the Bible that describe aspects of this inner kingdom. In the book of Genesis, we read, "And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil." This garden was no earthly place. It exists, even now, in the very self of every human being. The legend of Adam and Eve is allegorical. It describes how the first human beings dissipated their spiritual energy centered in the spine. The spine is the channel through which flows the river of baptism and of spiritual life. The Bhagavad Gita tells us, "The wise speak of an eternal Ashvata tree, with its roots above and its branches below." The tree of life, spoken of also in Genesis, is the spine. Its roots are above in the brain's energy. Its branches are the outward spreading nervous system. When the sap, which is to say the energy, flows downward, the consciousness is drawn into delusion. On the other hand, when the energy is drawn upward in deep meditation, the consciousness is drawn toward its eternal source, God, and is at last united with Him. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita therefore urges his chief disciple Arjuna to embrace the yoga science, the path of meditation. The yogi, he says, is greater than the ascetic, greater even than the followers of the paths of wisdom, jnana yoga, or of action, karma yoga. Be thou, O Arjuna, a yogi. For those who would find the divine truth, Krishna gives this description of the yogi. Steadfast a lamp burns, sheltered from the wind. Steadfastly meditating, solitary, such is the likeness of the yogi's mind, shut from sense storms and burning bright to heaven. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. I have often in my spiritual life and before, in hearing these words of Christ, "The kingdom of God is within you," I would close my eyes and look around in there and think, where exactly is that? I don't see anything. But I have come to realize that there's a little more to it than that. I remember when I was in school, I had a assignment, as most of us have had. You have to do a science project for the science fair. And so the teacher said, what are you interested in? What do you want to explore? And I thought about this and I thought to myself, thought. That's what I want to know. Where do these words come from that I hear in my mind? And how do thoughts follow each other? What triggers them? Where do they come from? I was way over my head. And I ended up doing it on the piano instead. You know, I did my science project on the piano, which was concrete, and I could make a working model of a little toy piano. But that idea, I was so disappointed because I wanted to study thought and how that process works and consciousness, where those thoughts come from. Now we know in the yoga science that we tune into strata of consciousness, and that's what determines our thoughts. So the next time you want to binge watch, you know, Cops and Robbers TV and eat a quart of ice cream, maybe think about what that's going to do to your consciousness and how that is going to affect your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your mind, the world around you. It makes it a little more serious if we consider what can help us grow in consciousness. So, in thinking of this topic, I thought of one of the yamas and one of the niyamas. The yamas are the things we want to control and make sure that we're doing. And the one I thought of is non-lying, or put in the positive, today's affirmation, truthfulness. And the niyama I thought about is, and niyamas are the things we want to encourage and nurture in ourselves. And I thought of swadhyaya, self-study. With swadhyaya, it's not just analyzing our thoughts and our trains of thoughts like I was thinking of when I was a child, but it's more than that. It starts somewhat with that, but it's encouraging and growing our self-awareness. And we start that process by looking at our motivations, looking at our feelings, our reactions to things, what we say, what we do, and reverse engineering that. What made me feel that way? What made me say that? Is that something that is good or something I want to change for the better? Always thinking about consciousness, uplifting, elevating our consciousness. Why do we want to do that? Because we want to be happy. Because our essential nature is the fruit of swadhyaya. It's the fruit of self-study, which is Sat, Chit, Ananda. Ever existing, ever conscious, and as Master said, ever new bliss. So each of these yamas and niyamas have a perfection. When you finally get it completely right, something wonderful happens. And with self-study, what happens is that once you have figured out that, oh, I'm not this thought, I'm not, as Swami would say, this self-definition, I'm not this, I'm not that. You trace all your motivations back, that eternal question of who am I? Who is thinking? All those questions, that's a path back to realizing that we're not any of it. We're not those reactions, we're not those thoughts, we're not those feelings, we're not that karma. We're none of it. We are something indescribable. There are no words for it. We are that soul, which is sometimes, as Swami puts it, sometimes described as its essential quality, which is bliss. That's what we really are. And that's what we want. When we're attached to this person or that thing, or we want this, or we're striving and struggling to get perfect health or get that perfect job, or all those desires, none of them have the fulfillment that we really are looking for. That's in the kingdom of God within. And the only key to unlock that kingdom is the Gita reading. Steadfast, the yogi sits, perfectly still, his mind like a flame protected from the wind. We have to get to that. And when we realize that that is what we want, and we have that desire for that level of freedom, then guess what? All the Maya of every desire has to be fulfilled works in our favor. And that desire too has to be fulfilled. So if we cultivate that desire, for that freedom, for that bliss, it must be fulfilled. And it's our destiny. It's what we were made for. We're just messing around here in this mud puddle, playing, getting mad at each other, having wars, fights, all the mess that we see in the world. But everyone has that destiny. Everyone will eventually have to say, I want that freedom. I want bliss. I know it's not in material things or in relationships or anything. It's just in God. But we have to have that yama, non-lying. We have to have truthfulness. We can't, unfortunately, the ego is so interwoven and just masquerading as spirituality in our lives, in our thoughts, in our minds. We think, I think this, so it must come from God. I'm obviously right because I'm so in tune. It's a pirate. The ego is a pirate. It steals your joy. It steals your spiritual growth. It's so important to be utterly, completely honest. You can't ever think, I'm saying this, so therefore it must be right. You have to think, let me listen to what the other person is saying and try to understand the truth of their reality. Think of the wars that would be averted if that were the consciousness of loving understanding instead of puffed up ego. So, as I was saying, every one of the yamas and niyamas has a perfection. Nonviolence, for example, has the perfection that in your presence, if you have complete nonviolence, in your presence, even wild animals will be tame for you. You can pet the tigers. And swadhyaya, self-study, the perfection of that is that you are able to come to such a level of consciousness that you can commune with higher realms. You can commune with the angels. You can enlist the help of higher beings. You can do that. You know, we're so much in an age of superhero movies. Isn't it so? It just, all the movies coming out, there's got to be a new Marvel this, and, you know, there's all these superheroes. But when you compare this age to like the Greek ages, we are in the age of heroes right now. We're early Dwapara Yuga, according to the masters, and that corresponds to the age of heroes. We want that. But the trick is that we have to be that. We have to be our own hero. And we can do that by purifying our consciousness and by making ourselves a fit receptacle to receive, to be in tune with those higher realms of consciousness that exist. It's just like radio waves or television programs. They're out there. We can't see them. We have to tune into the right frequency. We have to attune ourselves to that frequency in order to pick up that program, which I don't recommend. Leave all that stuff. But we do want to attune to higher consciousness, higher realms of thought and beyond. So if we make ourselves and concentrate, make that our job, to make ourselves the perfect receptacle for that, then that is shining a bright fire to heaven. Sometimes I think God and his angels sort of scan for light. Where is the light? And they try to draw that light brighter and brighter. So feel that in your meditation. Shine that beacon of light to God and ask him to make it shine brighter until you are communing with him. That light is within us. Let's burn it bright to heaven.
What's that?
Do you want some water?
No, that's okay. Nirmala's little image there of burning bright to heaven made me think of something that we learned how to do fairly recently up at the Forest Hermitage in burning some of these enormous burn piles, some of which are, you know, the size of large rooms in this temple. You get it started, and you have this little flame going, and it's sort of chugging along bit by bit, but comes a certain point where it's going enough, and you want it to go really, really, really hot, because some of the stuff is wet, and some of the stuff is leaves and pine needles and funky stuff that's going to take a while to burn. You get out your blower, one of these blowers that blows 150 miles an hour, and you aim it at the pile, and let me tell you, it's impressive. I mean, it gets white hot. It gets hot enough that you have to turn your head because the heat is too much. I mean, you can only be like 10 or 15 feet away from it. It's impressive. Burning bright to heaven. So to segue onto what she was saying, sometimes God will take the blower to our little personal burn pile and, heat it up nice and hot and enjoy the heat, enjoy the intensity, because it can happen that way. This topic is an interesting one because, like Nirmala was saying, this inner kingdom doesn't necessarily present itself in its full glory the first time we sit down to meditate. And so it can be a little challenging to sort of figure out, how do I get at this thing? How do I explore the inner kingdom? And I'm going to do something that I rarely do, but I'm going to hold up a book that just came out by a dear friend of ours, Devarshi, Nayaswami Devarshi. Devarshi and I have do-si-doed through more than 40 years of discipleship together. We've often been together, and then we've often been apart by thousands of miles, but we were together at Ananda Village. We were together at a community that we tried to start for Ananda called Ocean Song in the early 1980s. We were together in India at various points, etc. I mean, in Seattle. We were together for 3 or 4 years in Seattle. And so we've sort of, our journeys have interwoven, and he visited the other day, and we just had the loveliest time, and he signed one of these books for us. But I hold this up because if you would explore the inner kingdom, it helps to have a roadmap. It helps to have some inspiration. So many of us, here it is. The title is Kriya Yoga. And by the way, just to say, and Mary will help with this, there are only 2 or 3 copies in the boutique. So, well, I'm holding the third one because you're going to get to buy this one. So those are going to sell out. Never mind. Put your name on the list. She's ordering more. She will get you one by next week. So, what if you're already practicing Kriya Yoga? This book took 5 years to write not because Devarshi's not a great writer, because as you'll see, he's a fantastic writer, but because he's trying to write a book about Kriya Yoga without explaining the technique for people who don't know it, but to inspire people whether or not they practice Kriya Yoga. So if you do practice Kriya Yoga, it will inspire your practice. It will inform your practice with 45 years or more of experience on the path and some incredible stories. Some of you may know that I recently got knocked off a ladder and broke a whole mess of bones, and including some vertebrae, and which is why I'm wearing this lovely pleasant thing here that's forcing me ideally to turn my whole body, which I'm not very good at remembering to do. But anyway, one of the experiences that he shares in there is the experience of his wife of 25 years passing away from cancer. And it reminded me of the experience of getting a ladder knocked out from under you, because it really knocked him for a loop. And she was a dear friend of ours also, Maria, and she came from Russia or Belarusia, but of Russian extraction, and she had a very frank and blunt way of expressing herself. Very, very straightforward, very joyful, very intense. She said, so she and he are they're in the hospital. She's about to get a brain scan, which, potentially has enormous implications for their lives, her life in particular. And he's pretty nervous about this. And she's about to leave. She's about to leave him and go into this thing to find out what's happening. She turns to him and she says, "Detach yourself. Control the reactive process. Live the teachings." These are her comforting words to her husband, who is a little freaked out at the moment. But those are the words of a Kriya Bond, a deep Kriya Bond. Yeah, they're a little blunt. They're a little frank. But anyway, I hold this up because it just helps to have inspiration along the way. And he quoted something from Swami Kriyananda that I didn't remember, but I'm going to quote it for you because it touched me and it's powerful. Swamiji said, awareness often precedes control. You know, we talk about pranayam, the importance of pranayam, and Kriya Yoga is a pranayam. And, you know, you think, okay, well, I'm watching the breath and I'm doing this and I'm counting that and whatever. And it's not automatic that we feel like we're really in charge of this or that we really have it, that we really get it and have it. I've got it. I've got this under control. But awareness is the first step. And awareness grows. And then our ability to control what we're aware of grows. And we get to feel like we're more on top of it all. And it's a natural, organic process. So I'll give you a little real life ICU experience. This is my first time in the, well, okay, not my first time in the ICU. My first time personally being in the ICU. I have visited people in the ICU, but this was my first trip into the ICU for myself. So I'm in the ICU, and they hand me this little gizmo that you're supposed to put in your mouth, and you're supposed to inhale. You're supposed to take a breath. And they say, so you can't graduate from ICU until you can lift this little thing, this little plastic ball or whatever, up to the level of 1,000, you know, and which is not that high, but still, I mean, you know, for when you've got broken ribs, 5 broken ribs like I have, you know, it's like it's not automatic that you're going to be able to do that. So, all right, I took a little breath on this thing and got it up to 1,700. And they said, okay, well, do it again. You know, it's like, we're not sure that this is real or not, but, you know, do it again. So the next time I went to 2,000. So they said, all right, quit showing off. And and then they booted me out of ICU. It was like, get out of here. Well, actually, they walked me up and down the aisle, but I thought, pranayam be thy religion. I actually said to them, yogis of the world unite, but I sailed right over the top of their heads. So anyway, but you know, awareness grows into control. It may take its sweet time along the way. And okay, there's an elephant in the room, and I'm going to address the elephant because not all of us are necessarily aware of it or perceiving it. The elephant is that these bodies age across the decades, and some of us have piled up a number of decades. And what happens as the decades pile up? You know, we start, as we greet each other, our peers, we start having organ recitals, you know, where we describe this organ and that organ and, you know, the state of, and, you know, the joint recitals and bone recitals. And, you know, it's like you can get really into all this, you know, what's happening to my body and what's not happening to my body. And there is a natural tendency to feel disappointed or upset as our physical capacity diminishes or something is taken away from us that we used to do, that we used to enjoy doing. You know, I used to enjoy using my fingers and playing the guitar and playing the harmonium. I mean, I sort of chiseled out a few notes there, which, you know, whatever, wasn't great, but it was something. But, you know, it's easy to feel sad, disappointed, nostalgic about how we used to enjoy certain things. We watched Swami Kriyananda go through some of the last years of his life, and his body was sort of crumbling around him to a certain degree. I mean, he had a medical list of conditions that went to about 9 pages, And, doctors would look at this and it was like, good Lord, are you still alive? I mean, what, how are you? Oh, I'm doing great. I'm fine. How are you? And he would focus on what this is, and this is a deep yogic principle. Do what you can. Don't focus on what you can't do. There's always going to be something that you can't do. I remember Swami telling me at one point, don't try to build your life on what you don't do. Focus on what you do. There's going to be lots of things you don't do or you can't do. It's not that I don't eat meat. That's my life. I don't eat meat. It's like, what kind of life is that? Focus on what you do. And focus on the joy of doing what you can do. One door closes, another door opens. And guess what? We get to build our faith in the hallway while we're figuring out which door is going to open, because it isn't always obvious. The one door closes and the other door, we don't know that door is open necessarily. We might have to go and try a few doors to figure out which door opens. But that is our blessing. That is our journey and our process. And know that wherever you are along that journey, along that spectrum, that the divine is with you. It's not that we're ever abandoned. We go through different experiences, and I can say from personal experience that having a whole mess of broken bones is not the most enjoyable, the most pleasant way to spend a few months. Some others of us here have been through some things like that too, and it's not, you go through an experience. Pain is a certain kind of journey. It's a certain kind of message. But it's not there to torture us. I remember a beautiful line from one of Swami Kriyananda's funniest songs, the non-blues. But he says, grief's one thing and complaining another. Why multiply grief with despair? And you think, okay, grief, what he's really kind of saying is pain is going to come to everybody sooner or later. You're going to lose somebody, you're going to lose some function, you're going to make a bad choice, you're going to say the wrong thing. Stuff happens. Pain comes as a warning. It's a little warning light on the dashboard of your life. And it flashes, and maybe there's even a warning siren that goes with it, and it's, starts warning you. Don't do this or don't go there. But it's not designed to torture us. And Swamiji would just pull the energy back out of those things that he couldn't do, and he would focus on what he could do. And what he could do is he could serve. And he could serve with love and devotion and joy, and he found God's presence. He couldn't, in the last years of his life, he couldn't meditate long, long hours. He could meditate, but his body wouldn't, he said his heart condition was such that he felt like he was in a washing machine on the spin cycle, just or thump, thump, thump. You ever have one of those where the load is unbalanced and the thing starts to spin and it finally just shuts off? Well, that's kind of what it was like for him. He felt like he was being rattled by this heart condition, and it was very challenging for him. Well, you didn't hear him moaning and groaning about it. He just turned his energy, what can I do? Let me do that. With full devotion, with full joy. So let us likewise follow that path. Follow the joy into the inner kingdom. It's there, and whatever we tune into becomes brilliant. As the reading said, it burns bright to heaven. And sooner or later, you wait. Divine Mother will turn that blower on your little personal burn pile and light it up nice and bright. Namaste. And don't forget to sign up for this. So we'll take an offering now.